Hi, everyone. I'll try this one more time. Hi, everyone. There we are. Okay, fantastic. How is everyone doing so far? Fantastic. First of all, I'm glad that we all made it, here. So thank you all for showing up and gracing me with your presence. I definitely do appreciate it. So I'm gonna just jump right into it. My name is Javon Goard, and I have a talk I'm gonna give, a joyful rumble, Black joy within video game culture. I'm a big fan on questions, so feel free to actually tweet at me or Instagram me directly, right now, if you have any questions throughout the talk. And then once I get to the Q&A section, I will definitely be looking at that and taking questions at the end. And if you have questions during the actual talk itself, please just hold them towards the end, and then I'll try to address everyone's question as best as possible. Is that fair? That's fair? Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. So again, feel free to message me questions and get to them towards the end. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to dedicate this talk to my friend, Dr. Oscar Lemus. He passed away in September last year. Him and I both were at Indiana University in graduate school together. So his work, his life has been fundamental to me for years. And so I'm now just working through just how to live with him on a different plane, you know what I'm saying? So I dedicate this to him. Okay, so staking my claim. I am Black. I am a Black man. I am a Black man who loves playing video games. Each of these identities hold their own meanings. Together, they are a complex web of negotiations. My caramel skin tone and my male appearance hold a meaning onto themselves within America. As a Black man, I must be mindful of the neighborhoods I walk around at any time of day. I must be mindful to notice when someone is closely watching me within a retail outlet. I must be mindful that regardless of my academic credentials, a police officer will view me as less than human, although my credentials are supposed to be some kind of recognized hallmark of human achievement. As a Black identified male gamer, this further extends the web of negotiations in which being a gamer is not an oppressed community, rather community members can become gatekeepers. These gatekeepers can hold biases against me for being Black, though I love playing video games with others despite some actively holding disdain for my presence. The term gamer is contentious because of its association with online toxicity, acts of swatting, and online harassment, and much more. Furthermore, the conversations academics and news outlets have about the intersection of Blackness and gaming has focused on acts of vitriol, racism, and discrimination. This is not to say these conversations are unwarranted, simply incomplete. It does not take into the simple fact Black people continue to play video games and be a part of the gaming industry while being aware they are part of a hostile environment. Gaming culture, specifically related to video games, provides both online and offline spaces in which Black identified people have used and continue to express and perform actions of Black joy beyond just the form of resistance against a white dominant hegemonic force within American society. Are you with me so far? Okay, if you lose me, just say, "You're losing me," okay? Okay, so on the docket, I have 3 sections: an introduction to Black joy as a mode of expression, 2, the role of African Americans / Blacks within the early gaming industry, and 3, the contemporary but late 2010s to early 2020s involvement of Blacks within the games industry and esports. So, level 1, what is Black joy? I'm relying on the definition of Black from Beverly Daniel Tatum's work, who referred to Black people of acknowledged African descent as Black. Black includes those who would not identify as African American in particular, but are subjected to racism and would be identified as Black, such as Afro-Caribbeans. Black individuals have and continue to live within an environment that treats them with vitriol and brutality. Although the arguments discourses, and strategies people use to describe and enact reform have changed over time, the focus remains the same: a fundamental dismantling of an oppressive white force that continues to blame black folks for their own misfortune within America. This oppressive force maintains its dominance via structural racism embedded into American institutions and consciousness. Acts of police violence on black bodies is one form of structural racism maintaining social order in which blacks are treated as less than human. Philando Castile was killed in his car on July 6, 2016, with his girlfriend in the passenger seat and his daughter in the back seat. The slaying of Philando was captured on Officer Yanez's dash cam. Officer Geronimo Yanez was acquitted of all charges in June of 2017. On March 13, 2020, 26-year-old emergency medical technician Breonna Taylor was shot and killed in her home of Louisville, Kentucky by the Louisville Metro Police Department. In September of 2020, Officer Brent Hankinson was charged with 3 counts of wanton endangerment. The officer was charged with having a disregard for human life and putting others in danger by shooting the wall of Breonna's apartment. The drywall of the apartment was valued more than Breonna's life. Are you with me so far? Tracking and frequent slaying of black bodies is nothing new, for America was founded on such actions that have never been atoned for by those in power. These acts of violence are not even scratching the surface of the many forms of oppressive actions enforced on blacks in America. At the same time, dealing with death and despair, black folk have formulated a form of resistance against white hegemony and racism by what I call tenets of Black joy, by uplifting, cultivating, and bringing to the fore positive, expressive actions better known as Black joy. Black joy is a form of positively expressive behaviors and actions not only existing because it is in contention with some form of opposition, but simply a state of being. To be clear, black folks did not develop joy because the reality of our lives was deplorable and inhumane due to white supremacy. Rather, it became a strategy, a toolkit, a mindset in which to survive and thrive. This definition is based on my own reflection and understanding of the term, informed by social media, academic sources, and popular online periodicals. Though it is unclear of the origins of Black joy as a concept, the term has been quite pervasive within digitally mediated spaces. Hashtag Black joy has been quite prevalent in social media such as Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest, showcasing black folk displaying certain actions that are deemed entertaining, worthy of praise, and adulation. But before we transition to digital expressions of Black joy, I want to acknowledge Black joy expressed in a range of physical forms and venues. In a Huffington Post article entitled "Black Joy is Black Resistance," Reverend Broderick Greer states, "Black joy dances in the face of armed officers, sings in the presence of death, and shouts down systems of terror. Black joy is the spirit of liberation that inhabits black bodies in church services, defying order of rows of pews for spontaneous joy." Reverend Greer also states, "We will not be crushed because we know that while the history of white supremacy is long and triumphant, white supremacy is not the last word, joy is." Powerful sentiments referring to Black joy as a method in which to cope, deal, and thrive within an oppressive system via the church as a site to express such joy. A part of the Black church experience is typically the accompaniment of songs and hymns. Black lyricism, as stated by Jessica Liu and Catherine Knight Steele, point out is a method of black folks speaking and acting in ways the dominant group would not understand to express joy, as well as slaves using lyrics as secret coded language for revolt. Hadia exclaims, simply put, Black joy is the unabashed enjoyment of Black culture without apology or hesitancy. Furthermore, Black joy is also rare because the mainstream media would rather focus on Black pain. I agree wholeheartedly. In the age of near instant information, sharing Black pain is always within the news. However, I do disagree that Black joy is rare. Black joy is not rare. Black joy is expressed in a myriad of spaces and places. I firmly agree that positive expressions of Blackness are not highlighted enough within mainstream culture to be the default outlook about Black identified people. As stated earlier, the church is one site in which Black joy is the default, the unspoken but simply understood paradigm about Black people. Black joy is so much more than just about the opposition to anti-Blackness and should not require a mainstream audience to authenticate its existence. Dr. Javon Johnson, I love his first name, by the way. Javon Johnson expounds upon this argument in his article, Black Joy in the Time of Ferguson, by discussing Black joy as an epistemology or theory/method that is not about enduring certain struggles. Johnson exclaims, Black joy allows us space to stretch our imaginations beyond what we previously thought possible, and allows us to theorize a world in which white supremacy does not dictate our everyday lives. Johnson discusses venues in which Black folks commune to celebrate, such as house parties, backyard cookouts. Other venues include, I think it's out of order, but that's fine. We'll just keep going. But other venues include skating rink and the burgeoning spaces such as the annual BlurCon. I see you, Hilton. I shouted out BlurCon. You see that? You see it? The annual BlurCon held in Crystal City, Virginia. While Black joy has been supplanted in physical spaces, Lewin still discussed at length the ways in which Black identified people have found a voice in online spaces. Lewin still argued Black digital media users utilize online platforms to share or reinvent narratives about Black people, even if such digital practices are understood by the dominant group or not. Black joy can be explored on various social media platforms. One can see several themes related to sexual freedom, pride, education, art, and so forth, with so many other branching hashtags to convey a similar sentiment. Tags such as Free Black Child, Carefree Black Kids, and Carefree Black Kids 2016 highlights Black joy via images, audio, text that run counter to dominant narratives espoused about Black people. An example of such a counter narrative is when Black actors portray non-Black characters on film. In 2014, Annie was released in theaters, which was the remake of the classic film Annie from circa 1982, starring Eileen Quinn. The controversy, which was not surprising, was the fact Annie was Black. Starring Oscar-nominated Quinn Vinswena, I think it's Quinn Vinjane, right? Quinn Vinjane. Yes. There you go. Thank you. She was Annie. And from the moment the trailer drop was released, folks took to social media to express their confusion and disdain. Target was embroiled in controversy because they used a picture of a non-Black girl to promote the sale of a red dress as a direct reference to the Annie red dress in the 1982 film. In July of 2019, actress and singer Halle Bailey was announced to play the role of Ariel in the live adaptation of The Little Mermaid, with many in support of her role. Twitter user Dr. Jason Johnson shared an article entitled, Casting Halle Bailey as Ariel is Great. The real question is, who will be her prince, by TheRoot.com. In reply to that tweet, Dr. Jason Johnson added, hashtag Little Mermaid live action would be full of Black girl magic if they actually added some Black boy joy for once. This tweet addresses the lack of Black male representation in the original Little Mermaid and celebrating the fact that Miss Bailey is Ariel. Annie as a Black girl is a counter narrative in which Annie is supposed to be a white girl. Thus, to maintain social order, white supremacy acts as a gatekeeper to control both the imagery of who Annie is supposed to be and a way to control black bodies. Miss Bailey as Ariel should not be embroiled in controversy simply because the actress is black, especially since Ariel is a fictionalized character. But here lies the beauty of thinking through a lens of black joy. Both Annie and The Little Mermaid, which is supposed to be coming out in like 2023, are films already approved and budgeted for regardless of any presumed controversy, which I am sure studio heads were well aware of the potential of that happening. These films are intended to at least have a different but familiar take on the original source material. All forms of media, whether it's social media, text, or film, have the capacity to include black imageries and black thought if one chooses to do so. Gaming culture is such a space for blacks to express these moments. The gaming industry is an environment in which blacks have been and continue to be integral in the shaping of gaming culture. And so this is actually me taking video of some roller skaters at a roller rink in Bloomington, Indiana. And those brothers can move, let me tell you. Okay, level 2, gaming history is black history. Information about black folks within gaming history before 2000 is sparse, but through social media, online video repositories like YouTube, and digital records, more black gaming histories are flourishing. This could be because there was a lack of record keeping and documentation by news publications and academic articles, or it could be because gaming companies did not keep a good track or provide demographic information to the public. My first experience of rigorously finding black individuals in the gaming industry through academic sources was during a graduate course in 2019. I focused on finding arcade locations within the US during the 1980s and 1990s, which also led me down a path of understanding how blacks interacted with arcades during that period. Unfortunately, I found myself only finding the names and job descriptions through 80s and 90s newspaper articles and a couple of academic articles and through speaking with my own colleagues. Despite the infrastructural barriers to building and maintaining an archive around this topic, it is still possible to identify several significant black individuals who contributed to the commercialization and development of video games. Gerald A. Lawson, better known as Jerry, was born on December 1st, 1940 in Queens, New York. Lawson is noted for having a strong interest in electronics, which led to him teaching himself about engineering. He attended Queens College and the City College of New York. Lawson went on to work for several tech companies before moving to Silicon Valley. Lawson is most noted for leading the design team behind the Fairchild Channel F, the first home video game console with removable cartridges. Lawson passed away on April 9th, 2011. Without Lawson's cartridges, other cartridge-based gaming systems such as the Super Nintendo system maybe were not so readily accepted by consumers due to the unfamiliarity with the technology. And one way that the industry has recognized Lawson's contribution was endowing him with a grant in his name. This is actually Lawson's daughter. In 2018, Xbox created the Jerry Lawson Grant for Career Development, which aims to help people who identify as Black or African American descent. According to Sierra McDonald, a principal program manager at Xbox, the grant provided 5 indie game developers who identify as Black and or of African descent with GDC conference and summit passes as an opportunity, and to meet with Kareem Chowdhury, who is the corporate vice president of Microsoft Gaming Cloud. And GDC is not the most cheapest thing to go to, okay? So there's a lot of money. To be clear, Black folk of all roles in the gaming industry help with the maintenance and growth of their studios and spaces, not directly tied to the creation of the game itself, but the space in which to enjoy games. Equally significant, but perhaps lesser known industry figures Dolores Williams and Dolores Bowers were two black women who owned their own respective arcades in Washington, D.C. in the 1980s. As mentioned earlier, I struggled finding the locations of arcade locales, though these two women appeared in my research. I could not find much on these two women. I dare to speculate about the amount of joy held within the walls of both establishments. Black women to this day continue to find new ways to make gaming experience, both physical and digital landscapes hospitable and boundary breaking. Without Jacqueline Beauchamp, it might be the case that college football video games still fail to include a diversity of active participating institutions. Although the first video game to feature American football was published by Atari in 1978, the first American college football video game was published in 1993. None of the 30 iterations of this video game concept included HBCUs as playable teams. This would change in 2009 with the September release of Black College Football: The Experience for the Xbox 360. The game was published by Beauchamp's interactive digital media and animation company, Energize Entertainment. She co-founded the company in 2005 after working for IBM as a staff technologist from 1986 to 1996, and as a general manager for Motorola from 1996 to 2004. BCFX was the first to incorporate HBCU football teams as a playable team, and it provided players with a way to participate in drumline challenges. By configuring the game to interact with Rock Band drum sets, players could use a simulated drum set peripheral to experience or practice rhythm in a novel competitive mode that harkened back to the historical significance of drumline music at HBCU football games. Players, without the special input hardware, could also participate using a standard Xbox controller by synchronizing button inputs on the controller with corresponding colors that the game used to simulate a never-ending scroll of sheet music. Despite monumental efforts by people such as Jerry Lawson and Jacqueline Beauchamp, there is still a dearth of Black game developers. In 2019, the International Game Developers Association conducted a survey in which, out of the 1,116 individual responses, a mere 2% identify as Black or African American. Though this abysmal statistic is not all-encompassing of the total racial demographics of the gaming industry, this does suggest a huge lack of Black in game development, not just within the US, but globally. If we expand the scope of the survey by expanding our definition of who works for the gaming industry to those beyond the direct development of games, and in so doing so, find more people who are expressing, representing, living their Black joy in the world of video games. This includes people such as Sarah Bond. Sarah Bond received her BA in economics from Yale University and MBA from Harvard Business School. As of 2021, Bond is the corporate vice president of game creator experience and ecosystem at Xbox. In this position, Bond closely works with Microsoft products and services, not just related to Xbox, but related to Microsoft Azure and Microsoft 365. Bond was also the corporate vice president of gaming partnerships and business development, in which Bond led business development, partner management, and mergers and acquisitions for the Xbox division. Dave Gossett is the director of the Advertising Review Council, ARC, for the Entertainment Software Rating Board, ESRB. So they're the ones responsible for your rated E's, your rated T's. The ESRB is responsible for giving a rating on video games released in America, and ARC is responsible for how those games are marketed on television, billboards, etc. According to a documentary about the ESRB, Gossett states he had been a part of the ESRB for 20 years and focuses on content, and the content is usually in television spots, in trailers, in general audience videos, paid advertised videos for online. Therefore, himself and his team are the final say on if a trailer is suitable or not before it is released. In reference to what Gossett states, one of the things I pride myself in is that I deliver a lot of bad news on a daily basis. Like, you have to take out this, and this from your ad, your video, your trailer. Beyond this role, he is also known for his voice that many gamers may recognize. Rated M for mature. I know, right? That's him. This statement is accompanied with the information about why the game is rated M before a video game trailer began. Video games released in the 2000s and 2010s are more likely to have Goss's voice as the rating narrator. But you can actually find a trailer of, I think, the latest Call of Duty using this, but it's like a more abbreviated version. Each one of these individuals, in their own way, left indelible impressions with their respective area of the gaming industry. This listing of individuals can be viewed as just folks with no connective thread, but that is simply not the case. Through a lens of Black joy, it challenges us to think about individual expressions and the collective actions of Black people, from Lawson to Gossett and the many others undocumented and unrecognized, are part of a larger conversation about Black folks fostering community by simply being. Although community building may not be the endeavor for every Black individual in the industry, there are others taking up that call of action. So level 3, the communities we foster. Modern video game technologies enable users to communicate via voice chat, instant messaging, and live streaming. However, gamers of color experience hostility, racism, and sexism offline and online via these technologies. Although Black gamers are met with anti-Blackness rhetoric from offline to online spaces, two things are clear. Black people will continue to game regardless of someone else's ignorance and be phenomenal at it. This is evident in the myriad of ways Black gamers are reclaiming space and reclaiming their time, to paraphrase Congresswoman Maxine Waters. So one such space is the Game Devs of Color Expo. It is a space dedicated to people of color to thrive in the gaming industry. It is a venue for POC folk to show off their games, network, and celebrate the myriad of shades and hues involved in the games industry. However, due to the pandemic, the expo went online, but showed off over 61 indie games and had 48 guest speakers and panelists, and awarded 6 game developer grants worth up to $90,000. And luckily enough, I was able to be a moderator for this past one. So by all means, check this out if you're into any kind of game development spaces or just want to learn more. Okay. Founded in the fall of 2019, Brassline Entertainment is a game development studio run by 3 industry veterans. Brian Adabi Smith is the chief executive officer and executive producer who worked on video games such as Def Jam Fight for New York and Sleeping Dogs. Rashad Reddick is the chief creative officer and art director who worked on critically acclaimed games such as The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim and Fallout 3. And Manveer Air is the chief visionary officer and creative director who worked on Mass Effect, Andromeda, and Wolfenstein. As mentioned on their site, Brassline Entertainment is focused on creating original fictional universes that center on Black, brown, and other traditionally marginalized characters, cultures, and stories. Brassline is currently working on their first project entitled Corner Wolves. Corner Wolves is a fictional universe set in Harlem during the mid-90s, where Jacinta, a young Afro-Latina, embarks on a mission to find her father's killer. Corner Wolves tells the story of young people growing up in the hood and how their lives are shaped and defined by the war on drugs, as they are caught between dope dealers, hustlers, and overzealous police. Corner Wolves is coming to multiple formats, including video game and podcast. Black folks have been and continue to be integral within the production of video games, even though there is much room for improvement in terms of diversity and inclusion. Despite Blacks working in an industry that may not reflect their ideologies, backgrounds, or perspectives, Blacks still find a sense of fulfillment enjoying gaming. This is evident in the current player base. Founded in 2015, by J. Ann Lopez, Black Girl Gamers is a platform centering on cultivating a positive gaming experience for women of color. In a Glamour magazine interview, Lopez discusses how the BGG has been a resource for people coping with the COVID-19 pandemic. BGG hosted a wellness week via Twitch, where they stream relaxing and chilled games. The organization is an inclusive space. One must simply respect the rules of the group and be aware Black women are not a monolith. I Need Diverse Games is a nonprofit organization founded by Tanya DePass, whose mission is to shine a spotlight on works and research by marginalized folks, as well as discuss through an intersectional lens related to video game culture. Folks can submit articles to be published on their website. I Need Diverse Games also has a Game Developers Conference scholarship program to send people to GDC in California and among other philanthropic initiatives. Okay. Black individuals also flourish in the competitive space of esports. These are just a few folks out of the many who are exemplary with their gaming skills. Infinity is a fighting game competitor who plays for Kanochi CGL and a cosplayer. Infinity's cosplays include Catwoman from DC Comics, Sonya Blade from the Mortal Kombat franchise, and Gogo Yubari from the film Kill Bill Volume 1. Sonic Fox is a part of the Evil Geniuses team and has won multiple tournaments and is a 3-time EVO champion, EVO being the world's largest fighting game tournament. Professor Highkick is the founder and community manager of Ladies Night FC, and according to the group's Twitter page, Ladies Night FC is a community for women to come together to learn, study, and grow in the FGC. And Scar is a fighting game player sponsored by Endemic. Scar has placed top 8 in several tournaments, and in 2019 won first place in the Mortal Kombat 11 at a fighting game tournament called Combo Breaker 2019. So that's just some pictures of me, capturing video game moments with Black people held in BlurCon. I see another shout out. They paid me a lot of money to do this. Okay, so final level, start with joy. Black joy through gaming is more than just an act of resistance. Black joy should not have to be racialized within the context of gaming, since gaming and joy should be for all, in which Black joy is a specialized form not solely in contention with an oppressive force. Games research firmly supplants that people bring in sexist and racial ideologies into digital spaces that further marginalize and subjugate those within the dominant culture. Gaming enables marginalized folks to resist, at least temporarily, the structures that oppress them. Gaming is a form of expression that does not belong to just an individual, but to all regardless of race, religion, or gender. Folks of marginalized identities have always been and continue to be a part of the creation of games. Abysmally, there are still too few Blacks a part of the creation of games. In a world in which anti-Black rhetoric and imagery appears across a vast media landscape, Black people will continue to find their own sense of joy for the survival and preservation of Black culture, and most importantly, for their own individuality. Black joy gives individuals, thus the works produced based on those folks' accomplishments, a much richer and fuller narrative. Too often, our narratives about Black gamers focus on discrimination and structural violence. As shown through community efforts, Black joy is aware of such discrimination and violence. And yes, some of these efforts exist because of the need to have a safer space for Black gamers and other gamers of color. However, each of these communities are maintained through many individuals who all want their gaming communities to not just survive, but to thrive as well. Game studies, queer studies, Black studies, gender studies scholars, I beg all of these academic spaces to reflect on the kinds of inquiry they have when investigating the Black gamer experience. Have you ever asked your participants if gaming brings them joy? What does joy in gaming look like for them? How do they express joy while gaming? These questions have yet to come across as common parlance in academic works or on the digital Black experience. I believe they should. Otherwise, the Black experience within and around digital spaces will continue to be written with half-truths. Thank you. So I just want to first acknowledge that what I just said here will be in a book. Thank you to Trey Andrew Warsworm and Soraya Murray, UM Amherst. It will be in Anti-Racist Futures, Games Played in the Speculative Imagination in some future. I'm still technically working on it. I also like to thank these lovely folks who have definitely helped inform this work, and of course, special thanks to my buddy Oscar, whose work will continue to live through me and many others. Again, you can check out my blog sites, which I write about like games and even MAGFest as well. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. And lastly, and for the first time, I get to publicly say that you can also listen to myself and two of my other friends on our podcast called My Gaming Academia. We have 21 episodes at this moment. I thought I would have been quit this, but we have 21 episodes in which we've had conversations with folks from EA. We had a conversation with Latoya Peterson, who works for, she is the Chief Experience Officer at Globe Games, which is responsible for creating Insecure, the mobile game, based off the HBO show. So if you want to hear what it's like for her and her development studio, please, you can listen to it for free on Spotify. Okay, now I'm done. Okay, so I have quite a bit of time. So if you have any questions, thoughts, or inquiries, please just go for it, and yeah, let's go for it, and just let me know. So, any questions so far? Yes. Thank you. Yep. Okay, cool beans. First question already done. Nice. Okay, any other questions? Because I can just keep going or ranting. Yes.
Near the end, you mentioned how there are not a lot of Black folks in like game development and well, largely game development. How do you feel about when the aversion to getting into game development comes from the community itself? By which I mean, the area I grew up in, for example, a lot of Black folks prefer to play sports games, whereas I was the only like jackal playing like Spider-Man on the Sega Genesis. Spider-Man, Tasmania, whatever that crap game was.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. Now, here I am, 25 or so, I forget. Years later, I was in the land room playing Monster Hunter World, Skyrim, fantasy sci-fi games, stuff like that. What are your thoughts on, like I said, the aversion coming from basically saying, you want to get into development. Why are you interested in those types of games as opposed to something hood or street or whatever?
Right. I thank you for that question. It's definitely something I've thought about in several ways. First, it's one of those things where you have to find your people, not just this, right? Because sometimes this in some ways can hinder you because you may be put in a situation where all you're hearing is an echo chamber. So if all your other friends are playing the same game, you may feel compelled that you have to do the same thing, even though you're just like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do this other thing. So you may feel isolated and trapped in there. I can't, as a researcher, have any kind of like academic way of putting it. Personally, I just say, do what you want to do. Because many other people have to also find ways to get to the sources and to the people that they want to do, right? And so I think that can lead you down a very interesting path, because you'll get to see that there are other people who have these same similar backgrounds as you. Maybe not from the same area, maybe not from the same state or the same country, but the feeling of you have to somehow feel like you have to break out of your circle in order to flourish. That's definitely a narrative that you can definitely become a part of and strive for. It's going to maybe challenging, right? But game development is challenging in a copious amount of ways, right? So if you already know that the landscape that you're going into is challenging, and if you still want to do it, then why not just take the leap of faith to just go ahead and do it, even if you feel as though that you don't have support behind you? Does that make sense? Because I can tell you from my own personal story, I just gave you all a presentation on video games. 8 years ago, I would say, oh, I'm interested in video games. How can we make video games academic? I just gave you a whole lecture in front of your face, and you're still asking me that. That happened between me and a director of mine in my undergrad. Now I'm talking to all of you all, right? But there are definitely periods and times in which I had to just say, screw it, I find this important. I just have to find the people who will also find this important. Who would have found out that it would have been at the Gaylord National Harbor? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah, and we can definitely keep discussing it afterwards. Okay? Anyone else? This is fun. I love Q&A. This is the fun part for me. Yes.
I was wondering. So I enjoyed your presentation, obviously, and when you were talking about like Black history and Black gaming, why didn't you mention somebody like Mike Pondsmith, like who's like really big into like cyberpunk, who just made it to like a video game, which is like his intellectual property, even though CD Projekt Red royally screwed it up, but I mean, still I think it's like an important mark to like talk about, like, you know, that Black IP, like made into like a major game.
This is not to discredit anyone, you know. This is I can tell you from the book chapter standpoint, I was only given with this much room, to be quite honest. Like when they said that, oh yeah, we love to have you work in here, but you have to give it like this. As an academic, you're just like, yo, that's suffocating, right? So I had to make particular concessions. That's just par for the course, unfortunately, right? But this is not to say that I'm not aware of other people's accomplishments, because trust me, there's a slew of Black folks. Hell, just for that esports side, those are just 4. I had to pick 4, right? Just for narrative's sake, right? And trust me, my heart was just like, oh no, but there's this person, you know, like it's just par for the course. But yes, by all means, I'm going to try and figure out ways to, in other works, try to like encapsulate a range of people. And there's other scholars who've taken up that mantle already and have producing work. So folks, narratives, such as you mentioned, won't be lost in history, because that's why I do this kind of work too, is to make sure that certain folks don't get lost in history. Like the 2 women that I mentioned, I found out through an article, right? And as I mentioned to you, I couldn't find anything related to those women, right? Just because the course of history, and sometimes people don't keep track of things what could be important later on down the road. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Are there any titles personally that you enjoy that you find you express a lot of joy that you like personally?
There is one, and I'm blanking on the name. Damn it. This doesn't help me. This doesn't help my case. It's like, you just gave this whole talk, and you can't think of one game. It's because all the games are flooding into me. Let me come back to you. Am I allowed to do that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I actually, when you were giving the talk, I was thinking about that myself. And I really couldn't think of any games without the 2 games asked a question. And couldn't really think of anything. And so I guess my question/comment is concerning Black representation in games, just generally. How do you think that has improved? Can you give me examples of how you feel that may have improved characters and
Oh yeah. So actually, I did a what you call, not really longitudinal, but I did a study where I surveyed about 11 years worth of video game trailers, which amounted to about 400 individual video game characters over an 11-year period. So with like 11 variables. So pretty much I'm talking about 41,000 different individual data points. All that to say is I got to actually see the way marketing of blacks happen over a long period of time, which aligns to what games that they're marketing. I say that we are living in a better age now of black representation than we did 5 years ago. That's still very recent, but that is exactly the point. You see what I'm saying? Yes.
I agree
Mm-hmm.
with most media,
Mm-hmm.
but I still don't think that it's an acceptable point.
Mm-hmm.
If you would agree with that.
No, I agree. What I'm saying is we are better now than where we were, right? That doesn't mean we're at the pinnacle. It doesn't mean like there's this golden, that doesn't mean that. What we do have is an explosion of new creators, new developers in their own way trying to take up that mantle. At the same time, I must be mindful that my research was very heavily focused on the big gaming publishers, your Activision Blizzards, your EAs of the world, right? So that also skews the data to thinking that only big publishers are the sole proprietors and important folks of gaming culture, which is woefully not true, right? Yes.
Sorry, can I just say more thing real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, because I just wanted so example, I'm really into the Sims, really into the Sims, and EA, when you said EA, I thought of it, they have, the game itself expanded, their like skin tones and hairstyles to include more black styles, which was completely unheard of in all of the prequels, and it was like too late, but at least they did it, and they did it very responsibly with input from the community.
Mm-hmm.
They fixed all that within the past couple of years. That was good to see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And hopefully more things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example of a video game.
Okay, there's one person and I'll come back to you. Okay? I'll come back to you. The Walking Dead Michonne is pretty good. Because it's the first game of recent memory. I could be wrong, but it's the first game that comes to mind that actually talks about mental health, blackness and mental health, which in and of itself is very rare. And then I'll give you a twofer. Assassin's Creed Origins, Bayek, right? Though I do chide them in my own work about the lack of representing him as a father, because the game came out 5 years ago. So, spoiler alert, there we go. They kill his kid off, and I timed this. They kill his kid off 9 minutes into the game, right? So to strip him of his black fatherhood, which could be the most salient point of that game, is completely, lack of a term word, fucked up, right? So I blast him for that. Everything else I thought was pretty decent, but I blast him for that though. But like for those 9 minutes, I was like, yes, I want more of this. And then they stripped that away from the character. And I also make another point about black pain in that being a commercialized entity, but I digress. So yes. Thank you.
My question is, what's your opinion on League of Legends? And are you aware of, we're doing, at least my opinion, doing a decent job now under diversity and inclusion?
Is your question about League or about Riot in and of itself? Those are two different things. Okay, so I'll be honest with you. League I stay away from because when I tried League for the first time ever, by my second game, I saw in the all chat something, nigga. And I was just like, oh, not for me, bye-bye. And I never went back. I do not try people who still play League and can deal with it and get away with it. It's just, for me, that right there is not what I need, right? Even if it is in a digital format and even if it's not towards me. The fact that I saw that and don't know who's on the other end of that is concerning.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing on League, both sides
Right. Now, on to Riot in and of itself. How can I explain this without... Okay. And don't quote me on this. Because if you do quote me on it, I can know who was in the room. Riot is going through a very difficult time because of harassment and all that stuff, right? I've said this to other friends, and I will continue to say this because it still holds true even in the current Activision Blizzard issue. When you allow one person to do something out of line, make someone uncomfortable, but is not properly dealt with, someone else is seeing that behavior. Someone else is going to see that behavior and say, oh, they got away with it, I can too. And once you allow one person to do that, there's literally someone else picking up on that behavior. And then when it gets to the very top, oh, then it's easy, because if the big boss can do it, then all his other leans can do it. And then once other people start to recognize that differential of power, well, then what the fuck do you expect, right? What is going on with Blizzard, what is going on with Riot, that's new to us publicly. It is not new for the victims. Does that make sense? Because more than likely, they have already spoken to HR multiple times, who ain't do shit, right? But they still need to make a livelihood, because guess what? Finding another job in game development is fucking difficult, right? So therefore, what do? Deal with my boss who will say lewd, sexually charged comments at me, or struggle to find another job which is not guaranteed, right? These are the circumstances people have to think about, right? So in a lot of ways, fuck Activision Blizzard, because they knew this shit was coming. It was just a matter of time when it became public. Now it's just like, no, we respect, we're going to revamp and all this stuff. No. People in the inside told you this was a problem, and it's documented. They told you that the tippy top was a problem, right? Same thing, right? When you don't have structures put in place to call this out at the fundamental core, it's like diversity and inclusion. You don't just slap that shit in there like it's a Happy Meal to your order, right? You have to start it from the very root, right? McDonald's isn't McDonald's because it's decided, oh, we're gonna slap in this and slap in that. It thinks about the structure. McDonald's just don't put their shit anywhere. It's very structured, right? There's a reason why this McDonald's is here. Walmart, same thing, right? They think about this stuff. You have to think about it from the very core, right? So what Riot and Activision and Blizzard are going through, if they actually would have talked to people of color at the very beginning and had them at the conversation right at the moment that they wanted to become Activision Blizzard or Riot, we probably wouldn't have seen these problems. I'm not saying that just by having people of color in the space avoid sexual harassment issues. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you do not call these people out in the beginning, you're going to end up in the shit show that we have now. And then they wonder why people don't want to play their games anymore and shit is delayed. It's like, no. You all made this problem, and now it's public. You can't save face now. It's already been too late. You had about a 20-year fucking head start. Excuse my French. But you had a 20-year head start. What happened? So hopefully that addressed your question. I'm sorry I got on my soapbox. But let's chat. I'll be around, but let's chat. Sorry, I hopped on my soapbox and now back off my soapbox, okay? Blue Man Group? Like, I'm sorry, that was just a joke. I'm being mean, but yes.
Actually, just two things to say. One is just a comment. One is if Activision Blizzard was honestly serious about all the inclusive thing, they would get rid of Bobby Kotick. But of course, they're not doing that yet. But the other thing, with the current systems I've seen, with some games getting rid of in-game chat because their statistics show that mostly in-game chat just leads to a lot of harassment. Most games now coming with like reporting players or muting players, like options like that. And in fact, Sony created a system where if you do report a player, they can actually pull the footage and see what they were saying during the time that they reported. What are your thoughts on the current systems that are in style harassment, and have you thought of any that they could take that farther?
There's work about the way in which black people have utilized voice chat to silo themselves to avoid issues that you're just coming up with. I think game development companies should do a better job at figuring out ways in which to catch forms of toxic language. Riot has tried this in many ways to combat this, and other companies have taken up this mantle as well. It's hard to say from a researcher standpoint because everything that I read always comes down to the developers are trying to find ways in which to use like AI technology to catch stuff as it comes through, right? Blizzard and Overwatch is the game that I used to play a lot, right? Same thing. And I don't really have a good answer for you. The reason I don't have a good answer for you is because there's just so much nuance to that one thing. Because it could be as simple as people should just be better people to other people. It could be as simple as that, and I wish it was, but that is not the life that we live, right? And I wish I could also say people just need to self-police other people, right? But that too can also be a form of toxicity. I do agree that if you hear someone else saying something in like an alt chat or whatever, this, that, and the third, right, then I should in some ways step in, you know? Like even if I don't know the person, I should step in, right? Because again, it's the same idea of if you allow one person to get away with it, I mean, if it's 1 against 10 people are saying, no, screw off, we don't want you here, then what are they going to do? You're going to make them have a horrible time with it too. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's just hopefully that gets into your head that these things are just very, very complex than they appear to be. Yes.
We got like 3 minutes. But this is kind of in response to what you said, Tigger, about how we are better. Well, you started off saying we're better than we were 5 years ago, but still not good enough. I feel like when, like, I don't know how many you followed, so we had a game show last year when they put on Forspoken, which is going to be the first AAA title that has a black female as the main protagonist. And it looks beautiful. And I feel like when that comes out, we need to make noise because people were already complaining about the fact that you said fuck in the trailer. Oh, well, that's just so vulgar and that's horrible. You won't complain when literally the white protagonist does it, but because she's a black female, all of a sudden you have an issue. So I feel like when that comes out, another game for black protagonists, not in the next couple of years, especially about AAA titles, we need to be the ones to make these most noise and support that so these companies can see, despite all the haters, like Last of Us 2, I don't care what you say, I think it was a great game. At first, got so much backlash and shit talk by everybody who wanted to see it fail. And it wasn't until later on, it's like, oh, no, we thought it was good, but the we thought it was good crowd was so quiet. Like before, so again, I think our Forspoken, and we need to get out there, review, be on Twitter, be on TikTok, be on Reddit. It's great, it's amazing, so that they do this so much more and see that it's not a waste of time and that we should be represented and that they should take the time and focus on us and make us the main characters and not just these black pain stories, but of these black fantasy stories.
Mm-hmm.
See ourselves in so much more of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Forspoken is being developed by Square Enix. That surprised the fuck out of me. I'm just like, it's being developed by who? Let me find out. So yes, but is it published or developed by Square Enix? I'm not for sure. Okay.
That's one of their dev studios. They were the ones that worked on Final Fantasy 15 beforehand.
Either way, still surprising. So I gotta wrap up, but that doesn't mean I'm leaving, okay? So again, thank you. I want you to come to me once we're done, okay? And yes, I saw your hand in the back too, so please come up to me as well. But I definitely appreciate you all coming out here. Trust me, 2020 was not my finest hour. I never thought I would be doing research ever again. Because I also left my program. I left my PhD program. So I can honestly focus on this kind of work because it's important. And I see that since you all are here, it is important to you too. This is why I do it. So really, really from the bottom of my heart and for Oscar as well, thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. All right, enjoy the rest of your MAGFest, everyone.